remember even like the PS4 when there was talking about that PS4 no DRM hashtag, and like that was sort of a movement, but it was all, no one knew what Sony was or wasn't doing, so it was all kind of somewhat positive. It wasn't attacking people, it was just flooding them with like, hey, please don't do DRM, please don't do DRM. So that was a more positive kind of way to express a message versus you said some of these other things where it's like calling people out names and making animated GIFs and just, you know, the extent that the gamers go to. But I'm sure some people, I mean, feel that's what you need to do to, you know, cause an impact, right?
Well, I think you should differentiate between entitlement and demanding that the product that you want be the way you want it.
Right.
Because Sony provides an alternative to the Xbox One, you know, called the PS4. And so, if you know, my attitude is if you don't like the Xbox One, buy the PS4.
Right.
And then the world is good because you're still getting a good game console at a reasonable price and it doesn't have the DRM that you hate.
Right.
Microsoft reacted, I think, not because they want to make sure every gamer is their friend. I think that at E3, it's those early adopters who were vocal. You know, it's the people who you want to be the thought leaders, the net promoters, the ones who tell all their friends to buy the same box. If you lose those, you lose sales for the next.
And it seemed like coming out of E3, I mean, the pre-orders, from what I've heard, were, you know, predominantly in favor of PlayStation 4 in a big way during E3.
I think that's probably right. And so when someone screws up the design of a car, you know, they don't change it overnight. You know, it takes a while, but people vote with their wallets and they buy a different car if they don't like it. And I think that as long as gamers have a choice, Microsoft didn't give us a choice.
Right.
And I think that's what people went ballistic on DRM, because there's going to be a feature that when you're Skyping with your friend, you can actually tell your friend, here, take a look at my screen, and he can see your screen. You can tell your friend, here, take over my controller, and he can see your controller. You can't do that if you're not online. Now, I know everybody who watches this show is such a freaking great gamer.
I don't want.
They would never
I
ask
would
for
never
help.
do that. I would absolutely never say,
But
hey man, would you play this game for
But
me?
I have that Portal 2 story where I got stuck in that stupid yard where you had to like launch yourself through the P or the something in Aperture, and I could not figure out how to do it. I didn't know I had to. I knew I had to get over there. I just couldn't figure out how to do
momentum,
it. Yeah, and the physics didn't look right for the way that it solved it, and I spent literally 3 hours trying to figure this out. And I finally asked Eric Neustatter, how do you get through this level? And he goes, you go to the high point right opposite, you know, jump down. And I'm like, that won't work. And it did, right? I would have called you up, him up, you up, and gone, take over. I don't know how to do this level. Boom, done. I just, you know, it's like
You didn't
that
like
kind of
that?
stuff.
You didn't like calling someone and like you do it and then you get
No,
that
I tried for 3 hours
gratification?
first though. I would have 3 hours more to my life. If I had just been on an Xbox One, Skyped a friend who I knew had played it, which would have been Eric Neustatter, and said, fix this for me. You know, like, take over, show me.
You would have
I'd
lost
watch
that
him doing
feeling
it.
though. You would have lost that
I would have
feeling of-
replayed the level. That would have been okay. I just did not know what to do. And you know, like I said, I think that's a feature people will turn on, you know, the connection. So there's lots of reasons to do it. It's just that Microsoft hasn't bothered to explain that stuff to us. And so I think
And forcing you to have it on there. I mean, you can do that.
They
but it's
took
like a
choice away,
backwards thing.
and then I can turn it back off if I want. So yeah.
So when you you know, the takeaway from that was one interesting instance, and then just a couple weeks ago, last week I think it was, you know, there was this whole controversy around Double Fine and their Kickstarter with Broken Age about how gamers said, you know, we gave you $3 million, and now you're saying the game's not going to be done on time, we need more money. And then
There's
they
a
threw
shocker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, people were freaking out about that. So I mean, there've been, it seems like every week, as you guys were saying, there's something else that, you know, gamers get enraged about.
But
The Kickstarter thing, I mean,
yeah, you gave
come
your
on.
money. But no, but
I
if you
mean,
gave your
any-
money, then I think that's legit. If they're telling you we're not going to get you paid
You're
your
an
$50.
Well, it's not
investor,
that
you
you're
didn't get
not.
your
It's
return
not that
on
you're
time.
not going to ever. Well, as of right now, as far as I'm aware, it's not that you're not ever going to get the game. But in development, yeah, things happen, and come on, guys, you should know that. And you know, that's the risk you take at Kickstarter. That is the point of Kickstarter. It's a risk. It's a gamble. I believe in your product. I'm going to go ahead and risk my money on your product.
Yep.
You know, Double Fine's I would hope and I assume that Double Fine's definitely going to send this stuff out to you. It's just you're just not going to get it, unfortunately, when you want it. And I'm not saying that you're not allowed to be bummed out. I mean, but you're not going to get screwed.
Much rather have a good game, though, right?
Yeah,
Than something that just sort of
absolutely.
ships on time. It's like,
Absolutely.
oh, that was a waste of effort. Cal, what was your take from your perspective?
I think that kind of speaks to this whole idea of like with Kickstarter, we don't need publishers. We can fund ourselves. And it's like you can't make the game you want and fund yourself. Like that's what we learned is like you can't. You know, you need these other sources of funding. Like,
That's an interesting point because you have, these companies trying to raise a certain amount of money that they think the game's going to cost. But as you know, with publishers often, there's a milestone and they have to, hey, we got to kick an extra $5 million in to finish this game. It's going to take longer. And, Kickstarter's not set up that way. So it sort of shows that in many cases, it's like, it's good to have a publisher or some kind of investor or someone that can sort of, buffer a little bit between the fans and
almost
the
no
publisher.
developers have any idea how to budget a game, and actually, because almost none of them are self-funded.
Right.
I mean, Bungie and Bethesda, and id and Epic and Valve. That's it. Outside of those guys, people have no idea, and they need a publisher to say no or to say yes. Here's some more money. And Matthias at Remedy. I mean, did you see his Alan Wake speech?
No.
6 years in development,
Right.
and he showed us the PERT chart. This is how he goes. Here's how a 3-year game becomes a 6-year game.
Oh, I thought you said 60 and my mind was blown. I'm like sitting here trying to
No,
like,
Matthias
what?
is only like, I don't even think he's 40 yet.
What? Did I
He's
really
probably
hear that
40.
right?
No, a
way.
6-year game. But I'm saying, but he self-funded it,
Right.
and it was his speech. It was at DICE a couple of years ago. Is how a 3-year game becomes a 6-year game, and it's a tough lesson, But he was self-funded.
I mean, these games are made by creative people. How do you put creativity on rails? I mean, you eventually have to, but sometimes it does get out of control, and that's the situation you find yourself in.
And with Kickstarter, it's interesting because you don't have one person making decisions. You have all these gamers who have contributed to it. So it's like, at what point, just Tim do a poll and say, like, should we ship this or should we do more? And at some point, you have to let him decide what he creatively thinks is going to be the best game that he's going to ship. And it'll come out next year, and I'm sure people will hopefully still be satisfied with it at the end of the day. But again, that was another case of gamers sort of saying, hey, we thought we had subscribed for something, and then we're not getting what we thought.
I don't think that's the ideal way to release a game. Here's the first half of this.
Right.
Like a movie. Like here's the first half of our movie. The second half will be coming when we have enough money to spend.
Well, TV
It's a
shows.
trilogy.
TV shows go out like that.
Or Walking Dead, you could say, was like that. Like it started with an episode, and if it wasn't successful, there
Well,
probably
a lot of
wouldn't have been the other
movies,
ones.
Lord of the Rings.
But this was a game designed to be this whole game.
Right.
Right? Like
But I'm saying a TV series comes out weekly, and shows like 24, they never had more than 6 episodes because they changed the plot based on the audience reaction.
Basically, I think he's telling you you're wrong.
You're right. No, they had one. In fact, I
I'm
remember
saying-
one season 24. They had a woman who was head of, what was the name of that organization? CTA. Yeah, there was a woman head, and they killed her off in like the 7th week because people hated her. So she was gone, and they
could
replaced
react
her.
like
to the
like
audience
Family
reaction.
Matters, like Steve Urkel was a hit, and he was originally that was just a bit character, Steve Urkel, and they're like, this guy's we got to keep him on
I
every
was trying to
episode.
think who you reminded me of. That's it. Urkel.
Right there.
Urkel.
But is you're worried, Kyle, that you'd be playing through the game and then you would like stop and then you'd be like, oh, I have to wait 6 months now to play the rest of it?
Yeah, and also just you're perceiving this as a half-finished game. You're not perceiving it.
Well,
as
but I don't think it's not like the whole thing is half finished. It's just sort of it's half the story, but it's completed to a certain quality level, right? It's not like they're putting out a beta or something and saying, hey, then you have to come
Like
back.
you end
and
on
play
a
the rest
certain
of it.
beat that
Yeah.
carries you through until the next part.
It's
of the
designed
story.
that way, right?
I mean,
I think they're still calling it some like kind of unfinished, right? It's
Early
like
access or
Steam
something,
early
yeah.
access, right? Like it's
Right.
not what everyone had wanted. It's not like what
There you go.
everyone. It's not ideal, It's not the.
Hence, we're talking about entitled gamers whining about stuff. It's not what they
exactly.
wanted.
All right, well, when we come back, we're going to talk about another issue gamers have these days, and that's with the media. That's coming up next week, right here in the bonus round.